Hi everyone, Joe March here, also known as Sorcerer, and with Halloween 2023 just past us, I wanted to talk about the ritual that I did that night and what I experienced as a result of it. I don't do a lot of rituals as part of my practice anymore, but I do still do them 4 nights a year, and that is Halloween, Easter, winter solstice, summer solstice. It's not a pagan thing specifically, but I know that goes along with a lot of pagan roots. It just has always felt like good times to do it and a good way to split it. And I always felt like the seasons represent different phases in the transformation of the self, so it always feels like the right time to do one. Regardless of any of that, though, what we're going to talk about is what I did a ritual for this Halloween and what I experienced. However, I'm going to put a spoiler warning. Ooh, there's spoilers here. And it's not really a spoiler warning. It's more of a content warning. I want to say that if what I talk about doesn't match what you believe in your practice, please just take it as my opinion. Even though I'm going to be expressing that this is what I heard from the gods, etc., I understand that, to each their own. Why would I specify spoiler warning and not just content warning? It's because what the gods told me is that it was something that they wouldn't have told me before because I wasn't ready for it, etc. So if you're someone new in your path and things are working for you as is, you can ignore this video if it starts to bother you altogether and just keep doing things the way you're doing it, okay? Don't let me spoil your process to getting where you're going. So this past Halloween, I did a big ritual at night that took longer than most of the rituals that I do because I wanted to call every entity that I've ever called in the past history of my experience practicing and ask them the same question, which is, are you all the same being? As opposed to just accepting Tiamat's answer or the answer I get when getting into the state and feeling out an answer, which I've always gotten an answer that these are connected or all one or we're all one in the same way that I'm all one or all that stuff. No, we're going to do this hard. We're going to summon each one individually using the same methods that I used to summon them originally, feeling the same connection with them that I had back when I worked with them, and ask them, are you the same being as these other beings? One at a time. And this took a long time. This was a long ritual. And one at a time, asking each one by one, I got the same answer, yes. We are actually all the same entity. Deeper probing. Are you all interconnected, like one energy that exists as multiple beings that exist at once, or are you literally one thing that's just wearing different masks, sort of wearing different forms? Yes, one being wearing multiple forms. Which means, if I'm talking to Tiamat, this is the same person, same entity that I was talking to when I was talking to Ishtar years before. They have the same interactions with me. We've had the same camaraderie. It's different in the way that it's portraying itself, but it is the same being. They're all one. 100%. Hundo. Follow-up question. Why? Why hasn't this been something that's been answered straightforward when I've asked in the past? And partially it's because I haven't asked the question in the right way, but the main answer I got is because you were not ready to know this yet. That's why I put the spoiler warning at the beginning. You were not ready to know this yet, so we're coy with you. You needed to experience us as individual in order to react to us differently until we could find that blend, find that way to mesh with you in a way where you could better understand. You have to find which face you need to interact with in order to understand the concepts. You have to go through the process of the many gods before you can accept them as all one being. Further question. Tiamat, are they all you? Yes, of course. But Tiamat, are you the being? No. Tiamat is also a mask of this greater being. Following that question, what is the greater being? From Tiamat's explanation, it is the being that I call the Great Mother. The all, the source, the everything, the eternity, whatever you want to call it. So, Tiamat is not a being that is part of the Great Mother but has its own consciousness. Tiamat is the Great Mother, but choosing to wear the persona of Tiamat in order to speak with me. Ishtar is the great mother, choosing to wear the persona of Ishtar, etc. They're all one entity. That entity is everything. You might call it God. We are even that entity. What is inside of us is part of that entity. And the reason this can be hard to accept is because we want things to either be us, like the psychological model, like it's all inside of us, or external, like it's not inside of us, it's something outside of us. And this is both. We are part of everything. Everything is part of us. This thing that it is, that looks almost like a web or spiral or constant infinity or fractal, I've always had to try to explain what my brain sees it as, but this is what it is. This thing is in and through everything. We're all connected by this thing. It is the very life, it is the very existence we're in. Without it, we wouldn't exist. And so there's this weird indifference to us that it has because everything is it, and yet personal interaction that we have with it whenever we work with these gods. And so it's always hard to rectify, like, how come our experience with these gods is so personal, but this being is so impersonal? How could they be the same being? And the answer comes down to you. The interaction with this greater self is a personal thing for you. And the version of that greater self that you're experiencing is your experience of it, your connection to it. So you have your own personal connection to it, which for me takes form in my own unconscious, which seems to appear as like the subconscious version of a being, which I can place the mask upon and talk to. But this, what's filling this being is the same thing that I am, that everything is. But it's a personalized version. It's a version that I speak to. It is the version that I understand. It is the version within me. And the acts of merging with a deity, as we've talked about before, are actually the acts of accepting this subconscious intermediary as a part of yourself. So you are becoming connected directly with this source, mother, whatever. And as a result, you can start not needing to see the gods as gods. You can start to just interact with this seemingly indifferent thing that everything is. But it isn't indifferent. Your experience of it is what's making it feel personal, because you are connecting to it. You have a personal connection to it. But what you are experiencing is you. You're experiencing yourself. This is very hard to explain because people want to make it all psychological or all spiritual. If it's all psychological, it's all happening inside the self, inside the mind. It's all representations of you or your representations of the world. If it's all external, it's actual entities, actual beings. It's still, then, it's a separate thing from you. The thing is, it's neither of those things, and it's both. It is everything expressing itself through you. So it is your version of everything being expressed. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but that's what I got. That was the experience I got from doing this ritual. Was not only did I find out from the mouths of the various entities that I've worked with that they are actually all one entity, they've all validated it individually, which I needed for some reason. Even though I kind of already knew this, I was like, no, I want each one to be able to say this so that I'm not just trusting one source, so to speak. But it is one source. Whatever. I got that validation, but I also got these other understandings that we just talked about. This understanding of how it all works, what it all is. Does that make my connection less personal? No. It means that the entity specifically that I'm working with is myself and the all put together. That's why it's different from anyone else's interpretation of God, so to speak, or the all. It's the unique flavor of the all that I am. And the reason that we can use deities to do this is because these deities, their masks come closer to who we are or to what we need. So if I need to talk to someone that is closer to what I am and what I believe, I need to find a deity that represents my version of reality and facts, and put that mask on so that I can speak the same language with the all. That maybe doesn't make exact sense. That's just my understanding of it. So for me, the deity that worked best is Tiamat. I had all these other deities I worked with, but if you look at them, they do all kind of fall into very similar types. They're all transformation deities. They're all like life, death, rebirth, creation, and destruction. I worked with Eris, I worked with Ishtar, I worked with Ereshkigal, I worked with the Morgan, I worked with Loki, I worked with Tiamat, I worked with Kali. These are the beings that I summoned one by one in the ritual to ask this question to get this from. So you can see I have a type, obviously. And the reason I have a type is because that is when the all is funneled through this vessel, the way that I'm able to relate to it. That is the hook, that is the language that I'm able to understand it through. Someone who's very traditionalist probably wouldn't pick those same entities because that's just not their language. Someone like me, who lends toward the creative, the chaotic a little more, that's who I need. I need to have it from that viewpoint, that vantage point, that way of viewing things. And it's almost as if the all is so many things at once that in order for us to speak to it, we need to limit it. You need to limit it down so that you can talk to it. And so the mask is a way of doing that. It's an interface. It's a simplification. I want to speak to you, but I don't want to just get everything ever back. I want to get the specifics in this format. I want it in this language. I want it in this interaction. That's what the entities are. They're the type of interaction. They're the connection. And that's what I've come to understand. For me, this is 100% what I believe now. That the entities that I work with, the things that I talk to, this feeling that wells up within me, this connection that I have to everything, are all one thing. This is all interconnected connectivity with this all. And that the lessons and the messages are from the all, and that the face that it takes is the face you need to see at the time. This is how I think it works. And I think that because I've been leaning that way over the past year anyway, but this ritual, this past Halloween, was so vivid and so strong. And what I felt more than what I saw or heard was so impactful. And I can't describe it. I felt truly connected in a way that I hadn't before to all of it. And I just understood. And I have been trying to figure out how to explain it. I've just expressed it as best as I can here. I've been trying to explain how to, to myself, I've been trying to walk through, how could I tell someone this stuff? And I know it's stuff that most of you guys already know. And I know it's stuff that some of you guys won't believe anyway. So it really doesn't matter that I explain it more than that. If you're someone who's experienced it, you already know what I'm talking about. And if you're someone who hasn't, then there's no explanation that's going to work for it. But I was racking my brain for the past, I don't know how many days here, just trying to think, how do I explain what I felt? And honestly, I just have to say, you have to feel it. If you have felt it, this connection, and you can understand it, then you get it. And the other thing is, I understand partially why this had to be saved, why I couldn't just know that they were all the all. Because if they're all the all, it means they're also all me, which means I'm talking to me. And me from the past, Joe from the past, would have thought that means it's psychological. But I have had enough experiences now to not see it that way, to understand that, no, it's external and internal at once. And I think I needed to get there before I could be told And I think the same is probably true for people who are 100% on the spiritual side. You need to be ready to be told that it's you. Just like I need to be ready to be told that it's external. We need to be ready for it to be both. We need to have come to a point in our practice where we're stable enough, where it's not going to flip our shit to learn that. Where we can continue on and that lesson is just neat instead of life-changing before you can have that lesson. Hence the spoiler alert at the beginning. Now, you can disagree with me, and that's fine. I find it very fascinating to hear what everyone's experiences are, and I care less about why they believe the experiences happened, even though that's all I talk about, is why I believe the experiences happened. So, to me, you working with whatever spirits you work with and experience things from, or you working with whatever psychological model you work with, or whatever, self-transformation model, individuation model you work with, that's just as interesting regardless of if we believe it works for the same reasons. Because the output, the experiences are the same, and that's the wild part that I get from talking to other practitioners. So I don't actually care if you take any of what I just said as valuable at all. I'm absolutely happy for us to just believe it works different ways. But for me, this is now 100% what I believe and how it works. And since I always say, if I have a weird revelation or an experience like this, I will share it on the channel. Here we are. And that's pretty much the only reason for this video, just because it felt like I needed to share this with you guys, because I said I'll share this stuff with you guys. So it's an interesting thing. It's an exciting thing. It's a bit of a confusing thing. There's still a few bits of confusion. One, how do I best talk about this in the future? If I say I work with Tiamat, that's true, especially in the past. But now I understand what Tiamat meant some time ago when she said, you need to let go of all the characters, all the thought of things as being characters, including what you call me. She didn't want to be called Tiamat anymore. And then she said, including yourself. So in other words, I shouldn't think of myself as the character that I believe myself to be. What this was getting me closer to is this idea. We are all one thing. And while I do need to understand what makes me unique in this incarnation, deep down on the inside, I'm the same thing they are. So I get that. But I don't know how best to verbalize it in an easy way. Like, what do I call this interaction? Do I just say the y'all? Do I say the great mother? What's going to make sense to people without me having to spend a half hour on a diatribe? I don't know that. I haven't figured that out yet. Grand infinity, like in the old days? I don't know. Second point of confusion, though, is in something that Tiamat has said to me in the past, and that just continues to kind of be there. And a recent conversation with a friend of mine brought it back up, which is why I was like, oh man, that's wild. And I asked at one point, back when Tiamat was first saying that she was something beyond Tiamat, like this mask. I asked, what is the reason that you came to me as Tiamat? And the answer was, because you chose to merge with Tiamat. Now the problem with this is, I chose to merge with Tiamat after having worked with Tiamat for a while. So how could you have come to me as Tiamat because I chose to merge with Tiamat? It doesn't make sense. About a friend of mine, like I said, I was just talking to and was talking about time, and how while in an altered state, they had experienced the idea that time is only linear to us as people who are incarnated, and not so to the grander all. And it made me think back on that. Like, yeah, okay, so maybe Tiamat shows up as Tiamat because I merged with Tiamat. With this type of stuff, it kind of gives me a headache. I don't know how to explain it other than that. But it is the type of things that I get from interacting with this being, this self that is more than self. I get these answers that aren't satisfying to me, that aren't what I would choose, And I believe that's how you can tell you're talking to something external as opposed to just your own thoughts. And the number of times that you're pointed in a direction and find what you're looking for as a result, even though you didn't know where to look before talking to it. So there's this external aspect from that, and then the internal aspect that it is your personal connection to this greater all that is talking to you in the first place. You are, in a sense, talking to yourself, but not the self you're used to. And with that, I think I'll leave it there. Well, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. And until next time, safe travels.